Hello, guys, and welcome to my first mock draft where I have PFF subscribed, and I'm going to be looking at the players like combines. I decided to really delve a little bit more into this by getting PFF, and since now we have the combine, I want to do a 2 round mock draft, and we'll see if what I say will change. But with that being said, let's get started. We won't be doing any sort of trades either. In we won't be doing any trades in this one. If we get close, when we get close, I might propose like trades if it doesn't seem like there's a player that fits and that sort of thing. But with this one, we are still going to be doing just, straight verbatim draft with no trades. So looking at, obviously, the players and looking at Tennessee, I do think they go QB. I think that, Cam Ward, it just seems more and more and more like this is who they want. Maybe I think, it would be very telling if they traded Will Levis before the draft. But yeah, I think that they're going to go and they're going to draft Cam Ward. So looking at and then looking at the Browns, their situation is kind of ridiculous, but I've been hearing more talk about this, and I think it really does kind of go towards what is going to happen with them, and I think they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders, which I do think Coach Prime is going to be pissed about. But they keep talking about QB, and I just wonder, what I guess they're going to do with their cap space. We'll kind of know more next week when they have to be under the cap. But with this moving on, we're looking at the Giants, and apparently the Giants, I think they kind of realize that, hey, the two QBs, that are, the first round talents, I guess, for this draft are going to be off the board, and they've been talking to. There's been reports that they're having heavy talks with Aaron Rodgers, and I think that they realize that is kind of a thing. I do think that they're gonna go and they're going to try to get like a tackle, or they're gonna try, to shore up that O line. And as much as I would like for them to have a wide receiver, I do kind of see them going for like more protection or something like that if they do get Rodgers, and we're going to take the best available in Will Campbell. Going to the Patriots, it totally seems like a move that they would take, and it's like, looking at McMillan, this guy who's obviously a taller dude, and I've been linking to them, yeah, they need better protection for Drake May, but it's like you also are kind of unsure and don't have too many wide receivers. I just don't see them passing up on a guy that, is trending this way and has been trending up. And it's like with the analysis, he's just got too many pros and cons and that sort of thing. And kind of looking at him, do they have? I'm kind of looking to see like what I guess they don't really have. I guess they don't really have the, they don't have the, they don't have the 40 times and that sort of thing on here. Or do they? I just think it's just like I'm kind of looking at these guys, and it's like maybe I do have to look at the actual like draft speed, but I know that McMillan is a taller dude, and he's he has the potential to do crazy things with his height alone and his speed. But then looking at looking at now the Jaguars, who have gotten rid of their tight end, who have gotten rid of a two wide receivers in Kirk and Duvernay. I kind of had them going Travis Hunter, but it's like I'm wondering what they're kind of gonna go with. I guess I am actually gonna say that they take Abdul Carter still. I think that they need an edge. They need another edge because their pass rush was kind of just bad last year, and it's like Abdul Carter, the best edge in this draft. But looking at the Raiders, we get to here. They need a QB, they need a running back, they need wide receiver, they need so much here. And it's just like, I don't know, they might be kind of an interesting team, here with this. And it's like, it kind of depends on if they sign a guy in free agency like Darnold, which they could certainly do. But it's like, you really need DB help. But it's like, Jahdae Barron, hasn't been getting drafted this high. Do you take a corner this high, type of thing? I honestly think that they might be bold here, and I'm going to say that they take Jeanty. Because they really want that kind of pound running back, and that's what Jeanty is. And this is the highest I've drafted him, but it's like the Raiders are kind of an anomaly until we see what they do in free agency. The Jets, they did say that they were going to bring in QB competition to compete with Tyrod Taylor. I think Tyrod Taylor is a fine bridge piece. He still has flair. He still has good mobility. It doesn't have, with his style of play, doesn't need tremendous arm strength. When you're escaping the pocket, but it's like you look at the Jets and it's like they do need DB help. They're losing DJ Reed, and it's like I'm going to say that they just take the best available here and they go Travis Hunter, who has said that he, is entering the draft as a DB and not a wide receiver. And DJ Reed was their slot wide receiver, which is kind of what I see Travis Hunter being, because he's a lighter guy, and you're not going to want to put him up on the perimeter against these bigger wide receivers. But looking at the Panthers, what does this team need? What do they want? I'm actually going to say that they get a weapon for Bryce Young, who obviously solidified that, like, they need to give him more time. They need to improve the offense, and they need to give him what better way than going, with Tyler Warren that, did very, very well and exploded on the scene last year and is a big-bodied tight end. So they take him. The Saints, losing MVS, who they, ended up with last year after the Bills had released him. They need tight end as well. Taysom Hill has said that he doesn't expect to be back on the team because of his cap hit and their cap issues. And then D-line. I think that their corners are fine on their defense. I think that their linebackers are still pretty good. I do think that their D-line could be better. But, I also think about how injured their offense was. And you look at who's available, you don't have, Luther Burden is the next highest wide receiver weapon here. And it's like, you look at all these other guys, I think that they just take the best available with Mason Graham on that D line. That is aging, to be honest with you. The Bears, I had them taking Jeanty. I think he's kind of a piece of the puzzle that's missing that Ben Johnson would want. They also need, obviously, line help. And it's like the best available are kind of these guys. And it's like you have, this tackle Membu, who it's like, you look at the analysis for here, this guy's bigger, but he needs to be able to maintain blocks, I guess. He is low and feet can move quickly, but it's like, but it looks like, lead blocker. This is kind of what they would need. This is kind of what they would need if they were going to run, DeAndre Swift as their running back next year, which I just don't think will be the case. They could, but, this guy looks like who they would maybe get who could fulfill that role to do outside explosive runs that Ben Johnson does or did with the Lions. San Fran, you need some D-line help. It's been rumored that Joey Bosa could team up with his brother, and that would honestly be enough to solidify their ends. I don't think they would need any more on that. I do think that they value corners, but I think that they just can't afford Charvarius Ward and what he wants in a pick. I think that they, put their fans, they let their fans rest and not stress about this, and they take Jahdae Barron. They take Jahdae Barron, who's a versatile guy, shades of Stephon Gilmore, and is, an experienced guy who competed, against top talent and did well last year, for the most part. Looking at this, A&M he struggled against, Ohio he struggled against, but then you look at, Georgia, decent. Gators, decent. Oh, and I guess they had 2 games against Georgia, and one of them he did pretty well. And then it's even Colorado did well against, and then Michigan. And, just an overall kind of guy who's been proven to face, above average competition, and they let their fans kind of rest and, not worry that their DB room is going to be terrible. And I do think that they'll sign a pass rusher, and for all Joey Bosa could come cheap, if he wants to play with his brother. Looking at the Cowboys, I think that they need a lot on offense. I think that they just need, guys, on offense, to be honest with you, but I just don't see them taking Luther Burden, in all honesty. A little bit worse this last year than 2023, did perform well against, some talent, but overall not a crazy amount of top teams, and obviously still very young, very agile and that sort of thing. The analysis on him, he doesn't really block. He's a smaller guy, and he's a smaller dude, and it's that's kind of the thing, is it's this guy is gonna, he's gonna be able to do yak things after the catch. Maybe they do go with him, maybe they do grab a wide receiver here because there's not another available. They do need tackle, they need O-line. But I just think that, maybe they do grab Luther Burden here, to try and get CeeDee Lamb and Dak some help, even though I think that they're going to have to restructure Dak or do something there. But moving on to the Dolphins, I do think that they need line help. Sadly, there's nothing really up here in this range of 13. You've got a couple of guys, down here for tackle. I do think that is something that they need to address, but I do think that, you're looking at this team, I think that they need more pass rush. I think that, on defense, you need more pass rush. You need guys that are going to really show up in that regard. And, looking at this, I think you go with a guy like James Pierce, who it's overall had a good amount of hurries, had good hits, a good sack production the last couple of years, and, batted, a single pass on each one. And, in snaps, he was outside, most of the time. So a proven guy with a good number of snaps and a good amount of tape. So I guess they don't have anything on him here, but a good size and still young, able to develop and able to, come in and be a plug and play. Especially I think that they got rid of like Bradley Chubb or something. And so they need edge and someone to consistently go after, these QBs in their division. Mostly talking about Josh Allen. Looking at the Colts, I think that they need someone versatile. I think they need, pass rushers. I think, looking at some of these guys, the pass rush ability, the run defense grade, I think Jihad Campbell could fulfill, quite a lot. Obviously, you look at, let me see this. Pass rush snaps, not a lot, but did have a pretty decent pass rush grade. And it looks like he can, it looks like this is a guy who, maybe you develop into that. Good size, young, so a little raw. But I think that we've seen that the Colts aren't afraid, to kind of draft these raw guys. And, maybe this would be a surprise pick for them. But, last year, I'm pretty sure that they also struggled with, tight ends or something. I think it's a stat that I saw on the Colts. And this is a guy that you could give a lot of looks and creativity to a defense that ended up looking like they didn't have energy and their scheme was predictable, even from, the Giants, who ended up having success on them and knocking them out of the playoff race last year. Looking at Atlanta, I think they just need another edge rusher. Looking at, kind of who's available. Mike Green, obviously, is a baller, a big guy. I guess, nothing there. Keeps on moving up in boards, and that sort of thing. Stats, pass rush grade, very high. Looking here, maybe you do look at like the talent he played against, and it's like you have Ohio State, and then you have a lot of teams that, to be honest, I don't watch college football, but I know, that a lot of these teams are not the cream of the crop, type of thing. But obviously, did a lot of outside snaps and had a lot of production last year. A lot of hurries, and it was consistently bringing pressure. So I'm going to have them take this gentleman, Mike Green, to go and play for the Dirty Birds. Now the Cardinals. So guard, tackle, and D-line. I do think that they just need to go, D-line, to be honest with you. Obviously, looking here, you have edge, which I do know that they struggled with a pass rush. And then you've got this guy that's a little bit shorter, but he's a 3'4", and he's, around 250 pounds, obviously, but with a good amount of production. Not as much hurries as, some of these other guys. But it's like this was a guy who also, went up against and did well against Michigan, did well against, I'm trying to remember who this was, but God, why can't I remember this logo? But was off and on, was a little raw. Obviously, a younger age, might need to be developed a little bit. But I think that you look at his pass rush grade, and he's the best available, and I think that's what they need, on the Cardinals, kind of similar to the Falcons. You need some pass rush on that defense to help them, and not let guys get exposed all the time. Looking at the Bengals, who knows? I think that right now, I think that they just draft the best available. I think that they could get a defensive interior, but they were kind of banged up there last year, and they did take, defensive interior last year. So it's like, maybe you don't know what you have there with some of those guys, and maybe, another offseason get healthy and you're willing to test that. I think that they just go the best available, and they take Malaki Starks for a defense in, for a new D coordinator that can use a guy like Starks, obviously, who, Good coverage grade, good run defense, and just a very good performance against a lot of good talent, and lined up in quite a bit of spots, and that sort of thing. And it's like the analysis with him, obviously being aggressive is not a bad thing. Kevin Byard, was and is still a pretty good guy. And it's like, you get this guy and you have a plug and play player that can do a lot of things. Seahawks. It's tough to say. Their defensive interior was kind of bad last year, but like to me, they say they need center and guard, but I honestly think that it's like, I think the whole line was kind of like, I think that they just go the best available here and they take Josh Simmons. I think they take Josh Simmons, and whether or not he, is shifted to guard, center, we've seen crazier things. The Cowboys shifted that tackle to center and he looked not bad last year, after never playing the position, so it's like, crazier things have happened, but it's like, just take the best, lineman available if you're going to be rolling with Geno Smith for another year and start to solidify that O-line, and who knows what happens with, Metcalf or whatever, but obviously like there's not really any wide receivers in this range kind of. Now looking at the Buccaneers, they do need I feel like an edge rusher. Sadly, kind of everything has kind of went. We do have, Michael Williams and Shamar Stewart down here. But I think, and it might be kind of a bold take, I think you want a guy who, can be that guy that's a big target for Baker and can do it all. And, why not, take a guy like Colston Loveland here? So obviously he's more of a wide receiver, but it's like, I think you get a guy like him and Mike Evans, and you're dealing with two guys that are 6'5". Obviously, Loveland is 245 and that sort of thing. But I don't really think they need, I think that with the departure of Godwin, they're going to be looking for another piece. And I think they get a guy like this who, you could have for a long time and could be a really big mismatch for however many years. Because your O-line's fine, your defense plays pretty well. I do think you need an edge. But I think in this draft, maybe you're like, let's get a guy to keep up with some of these other high-powered offenses and, give Baker another weapon. The Broncos, I don't know if they need wide receiver right away. I think the style of offense that they run, I think they honestly kind of need. I mean, in all honesty, the Broncos are tricky because I think that they played better than they did last year, and the holes that they had, I think that they could use a halfback, even though that's not even listed here. I don't think they really need a safety because it's like, their safeties weren't getting a lot of action with how many sacks this team produced. And it's just like, I feel like the Broncos are kind of a big sort of anomaly where they could go. And it's like, maybe you just add to their strengths and you go DB here. And I would not mind them going a guy like, Will Johnson. He's a taller guy, going to be 22 when the season starts. But it's like the analysis of him, and it's like he could obviously, can play in the slot and do, and a very smart player. But it's like you start to have these kind of bigger bodied DBs like Surtain, or these taller guys like Surtain and then Will Johnson, and you're starting to have, a semblance of like your own Legion of Boom, obviously not that good. You would need safeties for that, but like you have your own DB room that's like, really, really good. Obviously did suffer an injury, but it's like this guy, He obviously played, you know, quite a bit of snaps, and I think could fit the mold for what the Broncos want on their defense. Pittsburgh. I don't think they go QB. Obviously, wide receiver, they're probably going to sign one. DB, probably. But the thing that I think about with this team is the O-line. And their O-line that once Russ was getting pressured and he kind of had to wane it up, when he got time, yeah, sure, he got a great moon ball, but it's like if he's pressured, he wasn't able to do well, and obviously he probably won't be the quarterback next year. But like your O-line has just been very like underwhelming. So you take Kelvin Banks here. It's like you can't determine what you have at wide receiver if the only guy that can get downfield is because he's so damn fast in Pickens. It's like you need a tackle that can come in, help the run game, and then also, give, some additional time from what you've had. The Chargers, I think that they're going to go wide receiver or edge. And, honestly would not surprise me. So we look at Michael Williams, obviously, not as great of a pass rush grade. So I would not say him. Obviously limited, sacks and that sort of thing. But like Shamar Stewart, they just got rid of, Bosa. Didn't have that much sacks either. Had a lot of hurries, though. And sometimes all you need is pressure. And to me, this guy obviously doesn't really fit the mold of a 4-3, but he's got to be able to win his reps. So it's like, do they go edge rusher? I don't think so. I think, it's a possibility for them to go someone and maybe do a reach or something like that. But it's like you get a guy like, Jalen Walker. And in my last draft, I projected him for the Bills, to be honest with you, because he's rated a little bit lower. But, the thing about him is that, he's been trending upward quite a lot. I don't know why, I guess. You look at this, lately he dipped down quite a bit, but now he's trending like way up again. And it's like, this guy is obviously sporadic, but he's obviously a very young player, but he's, very physical, very quick. And it's like, I'm going to draft him to the Chargers here. And now the Packers, obviously, as everyone knows, we're kind of in the market for a wide receiver, possibly a center, but I don't imagine doing that in the first round. Then we've got, edge and cornerback, because obviously Jair Alexander, from what the reports are, is that he's likely to be released because he apparently won't take a pay cut, and the Packers don't want to pay him that cap hit despite having a good amount of cap space this year. But we might be big players in free agency. Who knows? So my Packers, I'm kind of looking at, some of these guys. I think that, it's kind of obvious that it's like maybe you do go a defensive interior losing, some defensive interiors, and you get a guy that you're pretty much not going to give up interior run defense and that sort of thing. Pass rush win rate, pretty high too. Run stop a little lower. Didn't have a lot of sacks, did have some good hurries. Is a tremendous size. He's a big dude, he's strong, and he's quick. Kenneth Grant, this one, I would not mind this, going defensive interior for maybe a guy that it's like, oh, we're not going to have as much luck running up the middle, and then we can draft an edge later, or sign one, depending on it, type of thing. The Vikings, they need DBs. There's not really DBs available that I could see them taking right now. They don't really need edge. To me, they kind of need D-line help, to be honest. And that's, defensive interior listed as their third need. I do think running back's a need, but they don't go one in the first round, you know? So looking at this, the Vikings obviously running a 4-3 and, run stop win rate, pretty high. He's a big dude, lengthy, played for a good school. I think that they do go Derek Harmon, the Vikings. And now we get to the Texans. Obviously, they just traded for Christian Kirk, so I think that this wide receiver one is either not updated or they think they need 4 good wide receivers. Because they could go Egbuka, but they did just get Christian Kirk, so I don't really think they need a guy like this. You look at, the D-line, which it was obviously a big strength on the ends, Hunter and Anderson. Perhaps you go and you grab a guy, that could be an interior player and you can upgrade there. If you can get somebody, that was, doing some good things, has good size, and can do, and can defend against the run defense on the interior and force those guys to go outside, because we all know how Will Anderson and Deion Hunter really chase down defenders. You go Darius Alexander here. Because we all know how good their DBs and linebackers are. Why not just shore up that defense a little bit more? And it's like next year you'll rebound offensively. I do think that they need like a tackle, but there's just not really one that you would take right there. Now the Rams, I think they really do need line. And I don't think that they need, CB as bad as they say they do. I think that they played, respectable for being no names last year. You continue to let them develop for at least another year and see what they have, now that they'd be comfortable with the way the defense is. But LA, I think you go and you draft a wide receiver and they go Egbuka here because Cooper Kupp likely to be gone. The Ravens. Sadly, with them, I'm thinking that they need edge, but like I said before, not a crazy pass rush grade here, not one here with Shamar Stewart. So what do you go? Perhaps you do just go Matthew Golden because you need having a good contested catch. He's a guy that, not the tallest, not the shortest, young, but it's like have really good movement skills. And I think that a team with Lamar Jackson at QB and, the way that their kind of offense operates is that guys that can get open, they can look wide open when Lamar escapes the pocket. So I do think that they go Matthew Golden here because they really did miss Zay Flowers when he was hurt in the playoffs. The Lions need an edge. I don't think they really need defensive interior. I think that, looking at kind of all these guys, we are kind of getting into the range of Nick Scordon, who had, decent sack production, but, a good amount of hurries, consistent hurries these last 2 years, playing for Texas A&M against, pretty high-level talent. And, the pass rush win rate with this guy is pretty high. And I think that that's what they'll see and they'll hone. And even though he's a bigger guy, perhaps you have a guy like this on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson and you really have this beefier D-line. Looking at Commanders, I do think they need another wide receiver. Sadly, there's like none right here. Tackle, edge, CB. I think that they obviously need somebody. I think that they need to protect their guy. And I do think that they would be okay with going with a guy like this that has a very good pass block grade. You know, I think that his run block grade is good enough. And I mean, Gray's able, you know, good size for tackle. So I would definitely say that, you know, they take him here, even though, you know, the fans probably want a wide receiver, but they can always sign one because there's a good amount of wide receivers and they have plenty of money. The Bills, they do need edge, but there's, you know, they need pressure. They need guys that, you know, they need guys that are going to be able to, you know, bring pressure. And it's like you look at, you know, this, and it's like, why not pair a guy alongside, you know, Ed Oliver for your interior, and you draft a guy who's, you know, not the biggest, but he's physically gifted, very good run defense grade, good pass rush win grade despite kind of lower production on sacks, but good pressures. And then it's like run stop, pretty good. You know, for a guy who played against some pretty marquee talent in college. Kansas City. I think that they are just going to go tackle here. I think that they're just going to take a guy, you know, that they can plug in, and that is going to be an instant upgrade, you know, to anybody. And it might be a little bit of a reach, but it's like, I think that this guy fits the kind of size that, you know, that the Chiefs want at the position. And it's like young, coachable, you know, even though he did play the last, you know, 3 years, and it's like, you know, pass rush grade above average, pass block grade, you know, pretty decent, and, you know, playing against good talent, you know. And it's like, as we all know, left tackle was kind of an issue once they were in the Super Bowl, and Tooney could not hold up. The Eagles. I've said it before and I'll say it again. They're not really a team with a need. You know, they released Darius Slayton. They might draft a DB, but I don't think they're really that worried about that. You know, linebacker, you know, maybe. You know, looking at Demetrius Knight, very good run defense grade. You know, coverage grade, pretty good. Average depth of run tackle, not the greatest. You know, and missed tackle 11%, you know, not the best, but it's like, you know, did a good number of things and can even pass rush. And it's like, even though, you know, Fangio didn't like to blitz a lot, you know, maybe you show some exotic looks because you got to keep the defense looking mysterious years after years. So I am going to go linebacker for them just because they're losing Zach Bond. And I don't think they're going to re-sign him because he's going to ask for too much money for being just, I mean, who knows? He could be a one-year wonder. Second round, Browns. Browns, obviously, you know, first round 2 selection, you know, a lot of people, you know, looking at here, kind of taking linemen, which I kind of agree with. But, you know, in round 1 with them, we took, you know, QB. You know, perhaps right now, you know, they do need a QB, but I also think that these guys kind of need a halfback. They don't really have anybody at halfback. And it's like rushing grade, Omarion Hampton, he's kind of around this range, had a good amount of production the last 2 years, consistent, bigger size. You grab this guy to start shoring up your offense, and then you're going to focus on probably, you know, your offensive line, you know, after this. But Giants can't really take a QB. Tackle is what we took in the first round, you know, with them. And, you know, you probably need a weapon, or you probably need, you know, something else. Now, A.M. Manor, obviously decent grade, contested win rate, not the best, but a good, man coverage grade. And a dude who's got good size. So, looking at this guy, maybe shades of James Jones. The other wide receiver that we see here is Jack Beck. Did have a good contested catch win rate, good size. I just feel like, maybe the Giants look at this guy and they see, the better grades, better route run. He seemed a little bit more consistent, not as high, very low drop rate too. I think his grade versus man coverage was a little bit less. So, we'll have them take Jack Beck to give Malik Neighbors some help. And after they, of course, lost Darius Slayton. Tennessee to me, there's been rumors that they're going to trade, I'm trying to remember their guy off of the defensive interior, but taking Cam Ward, not having the best O-line, I definitely could see them, grabbing maybe the best, tackle available, but there's just not one available. Looking at what this team needs, I don't think that they quite go one of these edge guys. Maybe they do. Maybe they do value these kind of bigger bodied guys. And maybe they do just take a flyer on Michael Williams despite his production not being the best. Jaguars. Abdul Carter first round to help their their pass rush. Obviously they need a wide receiver as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what they're looking for, but I was just saying that A.M. Manor, not the best, but not as good as production as who we just had taken, but they need a wide receiver, and maybe they're going for bigger bodied guys, and this dude is 6'2". So I'm gonna say they take this man just because out of the need that they need wide receiver, even though I feel like A.M. Manor maybe shouldn't be ranked this high. Raiders. We took a running back. They need to shore up their O-line, but there's not as much O-line. I think they do need DB help, a little bit. And I think that they, could draft someone for the interior, And it's like you look at this guy, get a guy like this who's a pass rusher, maybe doesn't help much with the run, but you get a scary pass rush if they do keep Max Crosby. Patriots. We took the wide receiver, the 6'5", potential to be, just a huge game changer in years to come. We obviously need, protection for Drake May. I do think that they would potentially reach here. I don't know, if I was doing trades, I would, kind of move them back more than likely because of what's available. But I do think that they need tackles. I do think, that you look at, kind of some of these guys and it's like, who has the best pass rush grade, as far as I'm concerned. There's not really anybody that's jumping out to me. Maybe you take Tyler Booker because he's young. He has the size of a potential tackle, and that's what I'm going to have him do. I'm going to have him take Tyler Booker with the chance for him to swing out to tackle. Now the Bears, maybe pissed off that Tyler Booker got taken because they need guard. They need guard help. They don't really need edge. They don't, they do probably need a center, maybe a running back. And we did take a tackle in the first round. But it's like right now, in terms of running backs, you don't really have anybody that it's like, do we take this guy? Looking at a couple of these guys, Scattaboo does have a good rushing grade. Gap grade good, elusive rating very high. Maybe they do look at this guy who is more of a speedster, stocky guy, and chip on his shoulder, mentality, tackle breaking. I think that that's something that Ben Johnson might value, and I'm going to have him take Scatterbo here. The Saints had taken defensive interior. I do think their O-line is kind of an issue. I think it is a liability that they still have. They still have a guy, in the backfield of like Tyrann Mathieu that isn't doing anything too crazy. So it's like maybe they do take Xavier Watts, a guy who's a ball hawk, and tackling issues, but, incredible coverage grade, good value for second round, that maybe you can help improve his tackling on a Saints team that I think they have pretty good tackling. Now with the Bears again, they have a halfback taken, a tackle taken. Perhaps you do take a defensive interior here, or you look and you're like, oh, maybe we take a DB because our DBs were kind of shaky out of Jalen Johnson. And you go and you look at this guy and you think a kind of longer, lengthier guy, and it's like shades of Terrion Arnold, who just got drafted, who did pretty well last year, and you take this guy. Now the Jets, we had taken Travis Hunter because he could play DB for them or wide receiver, to be honest with you. Looking at this team, I don't think the pass rush is a huge issue. This is pick 42. I think that you look at kind of Landon Jackson, and it's like not a great pass rush, but had pretty good production. And, overall, good run stop, good run defense, pass rush win rate, pretty good. I think you go and you take Landon Jackson if you are the Jets. Moving on to San Fran, they have a DB. You probably need to address offense if they actually do trade Ayuk. What do they address on offense, though? To me, think that this is a team that it's like they might need some interior, and I don't think they take another DB. I don't think they look safety. I think that, you look at defensive interior, and it's like you've got a guy with really great run defense. You take Tyleik Williams here for San Fran. The Cowboys grabbed a wide receiver. Defense to me is kind of an issue. I feel like Dallas has always liked their DBs, and it's like, you look at some of these guys, taller, not good run defense, feisty. This guy, to me, looking at him, I think that, you look at this guy and I think that he fits the mold of what you want as a Cowboys DB, and they take Hairston. Now, looking at the Colts, they took linebacker, who's, a versatile one. I do think that they need safety help. I think that, if you are the Colts, it's kind of hard to say that you need too much offensive help, to be honest with you. I do think that they need, I think that they need, a tight end, but is there one available right here? Not really, unless you're willing to, go and reach for Arroyo. And overall, I just think this is a team that, looking at the way they ended last year, it might not matter who they draft, but it's like, I think that, I think that they do need like a safety. I think they need a guy that's able to chase guys down. I think that, he has a good tackle percentage, really solidify that over the top of the defense. And they take Nick Amanwari. Atlanta. Atlanta's funny. I do think they need cornerbacks. You know, I think AJ Terrell is still really good. Obviously, Siobhan Revel had a great coverage grade, low completion percentage, man coverage high, zone high as well. And it's like the overall grade really good. Only played in 3, but has, you know, great size. You know, I think the only reason you're looking at this guy dropping is because of, you know, his torn ACL. But I think when you're revamping a defense and you're trying to get a defense to play better, you know, you grab a dude like this, and you know, and he returns to form to really help your outside coverage. The Cardinals had them take an edge for their pass rush. Obviously, you know, they do have kind of O-line issues, but it's like, I do think that they need more D-line help. I'm not going to lie. I think you take a guy who it's like maybe has fallen this far, but is a good run defense player and a stalwart there, and Shamar Stewart finally gets drafted, you know, in the middle of the second round. The Dolphins had them taking an edge. I do think that they had a real issue on the defensive interior, and it's like looking at some of these guys in their run defense, they go ahead and they take Alfred Collins, you know, who's a solid run defender. Now we get to the Bengals, who took Malaki Starks. I do think that they probably do need to draft an edge. Like I said before, you know, some of these guys, you know, I guess this guy just kind of came up. I think that, you know, Princely, Uman Milan, you know, you'd be very, very happy with at this point in the draft for your pass rush. And then, you know, getting to the Seahawks tackle, I wouldn't say they really need an edge. I would say potentially you could have a defensive interior drafted for them. But then I also think that you look at, you know, oh yeah, we probably need a guy to be drafted, you know, to replace Metcalf, because it seems inevitable that he, you know, gets traded, and you go with a tall guy, Jaden Higgins. Now Tampa Bay, we had drafting Colston Loveland to really give a kind of mismatch, you know, in their passing game to make it even more lethal with 2 tall guys. I think they do go edge here. And looking at a few of these guys, you look at Braden Swinson, good pass rush grade and crazy high pass rush run rate, not good against the run defense. But you overall, you go and you grab this man who created a lot of pressure last year. Broncos. Another one of these guys that it's like, you know, looking at this team, it's like, I do think that they need linebacker. I think they need wide receiver. I don't know if they really want to go Restrepo here. I think Restrepo does kind of fit the mold, but they already kind of have a guy, you know, in Mims that is their slot wide receiver. So it's like, I don't think they go Restrepo here. I also don't think that they go and they reach for Arroyo, who, not a great contested catch win rate, doesn't really seem to be the kind of guy to me that I think Sean Payton would want. You know, nothing crazy physically about him. And I just don't think he goes this high. I think that if you are the Broncos, you're looking at, you know, grabbing a guy, you know, that maybe, you know, Carson Schwessinger, who has a good, you know, pretty good coverage grade, low missed tackle percentage, you know, not the craziest after the tackle, but also can be used for a pass rush grade. Why not draft a guy that, like, oh, who the heck knows what this guy is going to do when he's on the field, you know, and keep the offense guessing. The Steelers, we had take a tackle because honestly their O-line to me is just, kind of a weakness and a glaring weakness on their team. Looking at them, Cameron Hayward is getting a little bit older. He had a resurgence last year. I don't think Shamar Turner goes here. You look at edges, this guy has a really good run defense grade. I don't think that is, maybe that's not what they want. But, I'm actually going to say that they go ahead and they go with a guy like this, that has great size, can play, was a senior, but still very young, and can come in and plug and play on these run defensive calls to really shore up and make teams pass deep against, the likes of TJ Watt. The Chargers, we had take Jalen Walker, to kind of be that guy that can be plugged in on pass defense and even rush the passer as well as kind of that freak, crazy good upside player, that they might reach for to be like, we want this guy to play for and fill a hole or maybe multiple holes on a defense that was very good last year. I think that if you are Los Angeles, you do kind of want a halfback that is, that is elusive, is quick, has good yards after contact, because I think they were kind of missing that last year. And speed to power for consistent runs after the catch. And, the stats, not a crazy amount of receptions, but it's like, maybe run this guy in the play action with Herbert, keep him safe, give, Herbert, some ability with use with his legs. And, you've got a halfback that you can draft and you can mold and can even also run out of the backfield because his size isn't limiting him to run between the tackles. Now on to my Packers. I would love for my Packers to have, a good DB here on the board. But, looking at it, it's like the only one available was Darian Porter, who, had a very good coverage grade, but not a good run defense grade, which I think the Packers don't expect from their corners, but the corners that Hafley doesn't seem to expect, but the corners, need to be able to help, in the running attack, with who is in the division, with the Lions. And it's like they're competing with the Lions until proven otherwise that they can win the division over them. I don't know if Dorian Porter is really that guy. He is a taller corner. He's an older core. I think, he does have good ball skills. Maybe this would be a guy that you could bring in, and who knows? Perhaps this is a guy that would be seen and, drafted by Goody. I don't know. Alluring length, did play receiver. So it kind of makes him understand that position from an aspect that he played it. And it's like, the stats, let's see here. Obviously defensive snaps, didn't play a lot until last year, and he did fairly well. So it's like maybe that upside is crazy, and they draft Darian Porter. Now the Buffalo Bills with 2 picks in this round, I think they do go edge. I think that they, go with a guy that has good pass rush, and they take Jack Sawyer. Honestly, sounds like a name that I could see in a Bills uniform, to be honest with you. Now looking at Houston, I really do think that they need to address O-line. I think that, with pick 57 here, it wouldn't be, bad to take the best available and take Ursary out of Minnesota. The Panthers, we had taking Tyler Warren, with pick 8. because I think that they need kind of a big-bodied guy to be able to do, and give Jan another weapon. Now with their defense, I think they need an edge, but they don't really have, that many edges available. I guess, they have there's Shamar Turner, who doesn't pass rush. Jared Ivey, who had decent production last year and overall was very good, seems like somewhat of a steal, who's been on the rise. So I'm going to have them taking Jared Ivey. Ravens, we had taken a wide receiver to help them there. I don't think they need another wide receiver. Perhaps you draft a DB. Perhaps you draft a defensive interior. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of guys to me that, you would take right here if you're the Ravens. Maybe you do take a guy like Caleb Johnson. Maybe you take a halfback or something. Or maybe you take an edge that, little bit of a reach, but had a pretty decent pass rush grade. So I'm going to have them taking Kyle Kennard. Detroit Lions, we addressed edge. I think that they do need to draft a DB. I think that, looking at the DBs that they have, they kind of look for that taller guy who's a little bit lengthy. I think that Azareye'h Thomas here can be their guy. Commanders taking a tackle for protection. And, looking at this, you kind of have a couple guys. I heard that Ertz is he's probably returning. I don't know if I've seen that sort of thing. But it's like Elijah Arroyo, not your typical tight end. I think that they wait. I think you do, need kind of a better running game. Is Dylan Sampson your guy? A dude who, stocky, younger, not the biggest, not the smallest, but he is a speedster, and I think that is something they could use on this team. Is a little bit of misdirection or maybe even play action with a speedster where it's like, oh, who do we assign them to defend against? Daniels or the running back? I'm going to have them take Dylan Sampson. Now the Bills. We obviously have addressed their line quite a bit. I don't think they go defense again here, even though I think that they do kind of need a DB, with the loss of some guys, looking at this. I don't think Benjamin Morrison is the guy. Looking at, I guess, edge rushers, I think pass rush, maybe you do just take a couple of guys here. Hosea Stewart, alongside Jack Sawyer, have these guys compete or have a lot of, depth. You can never have enough good pass rushers. I'm going to have them take another edge rusher to really be like, yeah, we're going to be getting after the QB and we're not going to worry about, these aging edge rushers that we have. Besides, obviously, Greg Rousseau. But it's like I said, you never know, if a guy will pan or if a guy is going to be a boom or bust prospect. Never too many edge rushers. So you double down on there. Kansas City. It seems like Kelsey's coming back. I don't know about Elijah Arroyo to them either. I'm wondering if they go DB or if they go defensive interior. Shamar Turner is a guy that, I don't know, he looks, his average draft position is, lower than this, but I don't see it with Turner. I do think you need wide receiver. So Xavier Restrepo, give, Patrick Mahomes a guy who has a good contested catch rate, good grade against man coverage, make it a little bit easier. I'm actually going to say that they'll take this guy, I don't think that they really value crazy size all the time with their wide receivers, and they don't mind drafting a dude who, is 5'10", is on the shorter side. for Mahomes to dump it off to. Now the Eagles. Hate drafting for these guys. You know, I do think Gainwell is a free agent. You know, obviously they have Saquon. I do think halfback will be a need just because you don't want to be without any sort of like guy to fall back on, you know? And it's like you look at Caleb Johnson, he's a bruiser, you know, a 6 foot 225 guy. And I think that, you know, good scheme, good whatever, it wouldn't be, you know, crazy for them to go with this guy and, you know, be able to have fresh legs the whole time. It honestly would remind me a little bit of the Lions, where it's like, you know, yeah, your number one, Saquon, has speed and power and elusiveness. And then it's like, you look at this guy, it's like, if you ever have a game where it's like maybe Saquon's not hot, you have a guy who's going to pound it just as hard as well, and you keep pounding the rock behind that dominant O-line. Might sound crazy, but I can see this guy going here and, you know, finishing up this 2-round mock draft. So if you guys... So yeah, looking at this, you know, obviously it only shows the, you know, let's see the full results here. You know, scrolling up and down here, if you guys, you know, don't want to watch the whole video, I get it. This is a longer one, but it's like, yeah, pause, you know, at any time when I'm scrolling down here. I think that, you know, looking at this, I am really happy with this. You know, I definitely think this is a very plausible thing. I threw some kind of wild cards in there to some teams that might be like, oh, we might do this to really try to shore this up and, you know, nip it in the bud, so to speak, on like positions of need. But that's all that I'm going to say about this. And, you know, I'm going to do some combine research to see if I can get more insight there. But if you guys like this kind of content, you want to see NFL content like this twice a week minimum, then, you know, please, you know, subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. And I'm going to continue to keep doing this in the off season. And, you know, some of these videos might end up, you know, being somewhat, you know, I wouldn't say outlandish, but, you know, we're obviously going to be doing this the whole off season, you know, to kind of give my insight and my thoughts on what's going on in the NFL. But with that being said, I am Cassidy Streeter, and this is CastCast. And as always, go Pack Go.